Hey there, my friends, it's Dave Wood. Today, let's cut through the bullshit. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to stop doing something and start doing something else. What we need to stop doing is promoting the minimum necessary personal growth to people. And we need to start teaching people a more reality-based, true approach to learning, to growth, to self-education that's actually going to get them results. See, one of the smartest things that people do in their life that I didn't do, mostly because I was young and arrogant, was go to college. Now, I've made fun of college a lot, so that might surprise some of you, but I've learned a lot over the years. Now, I think there's way more modern ways to create prosperity than what you're going to learn in particular in most college courses, right? And therefore, we can teach more relevant things to money creation if that's your goal. But it's not for that. It's the discipline that you get of following through on something you said you'd do, and the stress and post-learning that has an effect on people as they go through education of changing people into somebody better. Now, one of the smartest things to do after that most college graduates don't do, mostly out of arrogance too, is continue to study like they did when they went to college to prepare constantly for the next phase of their life and the changes that are going to happen in the marketplace. Now, I've done the latter, I've not done the former. In other words, I didn't go to college, but I study like I'm a college student now. So what I mean by that is most people, they don't study for what they actually want in their life. Now, why am I saying this? Well, in our industry, which kind of has a big group of businesses in it, we look at personal growth in a sort of minimalist, average sort of way, but none of the people who actually get results are actually minimalist. And that's really like how society in the government teaches everybody to be average when nobody I've ever met wants to be average. And if you're watching this, I already know something about you. I know that you're more than average. I know that you're better than the minimum. So we go out there, we promote some sort of a minimalist approach, which is not an honest one, and it's not going to get people rich. You have somebody who wants to get rich and do the minimum. We just need to tell them, sorry, go do the minimum and get a minimum result. Does that make sense to you? Now, here's something that we've said a lot in this industry. I repeated, it's actually not a very good thing to say. Something like this: just read 10 pages of good book a day. Be consistent with your reading. Or listen to 30 minutes of an audio day and just listen to that audio, nothing more. Or have a daily habit of X, Y, and Z, and that's it. Now, we do that because we just want people to do it at all. Most people, they read an average after college, if they have a degree, of a book a year, and most Americans, they read no books. But the reality is that people that are successful, they read a lot more than 10 minutes a day or 10 pages a day. They study everything they need to succeed. Now, all of this is the same crap. It's minimalist, non-realistic ways of growing yourself and paying attention to information that won't produce the results that you want. If you want to completely change your life situation in 5 years, you want to treat right now like these next 5 years you're going to college at Millionaire University. And therefore, you need to be constantly feeding your mind with information that will allow you to develop good millionaire instincts, which is actually what study should really be about. It's about developing good instincts for what you're doing, not for learning a particular fact or one way of doing things. Now, you're not going to develop the sort of trained intuition that my brother William Wood has in NLP and hypnosis without going to 5,000 hours in the classroom training like he did and sitting down in front of 15,000 hours or whatever he's done. It's like tens of thousands of hours. And somebody can't learn a strategy from a page in a book and get those results. Uneducated people also, they're easy to control. They're easy to control with the media. They're easy to control through marketing. They're easy to control by elitists who want to control people and keep the society and the people around them in check with their own weird rules and philosophies. Is it any wonder that our giant, big government education system is making people more stupid, probably on purpose? I actually think this is not an accident. I think it's to make people who could be shining bright like the light of the sun, wandering around with the other sheep in society, looking at the butt of the sheep that's directly in front of them. So you don't want to read 10 pages of a good book a day and that's it. Now, if that's all the time you got, that's all the time you got, but you got to change to make more time. I want you to read as much as you can in your industry, in your area of expertise. I've been reading books lately by billionaires, and every one of them that I've studied, they read a minimum of 3 hours a day, and some of them a lot more. And they do that just for their industry, mostly. Donald Trump, for example, just won the presidency. He reads 3 hours a day, and you've got media calling him illiterate and saying he can't read, but they've not even read his books. Warren Buffett, he reads a minimum of 6 hours a day to keep up with the market, and he owns 30% of the transportation infrastructure in the United States that transports commodities across America. That's how rich and powerful he is. And a lot of you, I don't even know if you know who he is. I hope you do. But it's not just them. It doesn't matter whether it's a real estate mogul. It doesn't matter if it's the president, the richest investor in the world, a computer scientist, like somebody, who's creating tech companies that are growing to billions of dollars. They act like they're in college studying for the next phase of their life every day of their life. Are you willing to take your personal development to the next level? Now I'm going to tell a story here, and this is about a conversation I had with a gentleman on Facebook when I was posting about this. And he was saying, Dave, you can't expect somebody who's got kids and a full-time job to read or study or keep a whole market in their mind like that. It's not honest. And I asked him, I said, do you think you're busier than a billionaire? It's kind of a different way to ask it, isn't it? It's like, oh no, I don't have time to do that, but the president of the country or the owner of a billion-dollar corporation or David Wood has time? Like you have less responsibility than me somehow? I think not, right? I think not. And the reality is that I become more efficient by taking time to study. Now, honestly, it's no wonder that the United States have become a country of sheeple over the last few decades, and elitist media and globalism controlling people's minds without people don't even fact check what they see on TV. They don't even know our whole monetary system, our whole currency isn't controlled by governments, it's controlled by private bankers and families, right? And this is all stuff you could read on Wikipedia if you read. This is because we've been trained to not question authority when somebody's imposing authority, even if they're wrong. Now I'm a Christian, and Paul in the New Testament, he taught Christian churches to not just believe preachers, but to check their words against references and to question everything. And why did he do that? He did that because he was building leaders, not we the sheeple of the United States of America. And we need to not be sheeple. Look, I love sheep, but I don't want to be a sheep. Does that make sense? I'm a human being. And human beings are designed, we're grown, we're evolved to lead, to have vision, to become great. I was talking to a friend of mine, his name's Rob Ramoni, the other day, and I was talking to him about neurofeedback and its ability to create an IQ jump of around 10 points when it's properly structured that will create permanent changes in the brain structure. And he immediately scheduled a week-long neurofeedback training with an institution I've been aware of for a long time. It costed multiple 5 figures. Now I'm going to tell a story about that, and this is because a lot of people don't connect these things, and I'll tell you another story about another conversation I had with a friend. So now I'm talking about IQ, right, which is your intelligence quotient, specifically about fluid intelligence. Now, some of you know what that is. But I was having another conversation when I was talking about this on Facebook, and somebody said, I thought that IQ doesn't affect income, and that's because people don't think IQ can change and they don't read studies. And personal development experts often misquote things if they don't research them. And so even if somebody's a good trainer and they say mostly good things, even myself or Tony Robbins or whoever it is, not everybody is right about everything. And if you look at any study in a large scale population, the only thing that is connected to income as much as IQ is actually education. However, the thing that most people don't know, especially in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of research on IQ. And IQ can be massively increased. One of the ways to do that is neurofeedback, reading a lot, and a 10-point jump in IQ is a totally different brain. And so if somebody, for example, in the United States, people have an average IQ of 100, and they increase their IQ by 10 points, it's not just a 10% increase in their ability to process information, it's a totally different kind of brain. And so I recommended that to Rob. Here's the thing, I didn't even get a commission for that, but that's okay. Why? Well, because unlike personal development gurus are teaching, like I said, IQ does affect income and is the single biggest predictor of future ability to earn, competing right alongside with professional education and how hard you work. But IQ is malleable like every other part of the brain, and leaps in consciousness produce the ability to work with more information at the same time in more creative ways simultaneously. Now, there are several known things that can radically improve your fluid intelligence capacity, which is the ability to work with new information with your mind. Now, these are some of them. I'm not going to get into all of them. One would be neurofeedback training. Like I mentioned, what's neurofeedback training? It's taking a machine that measures your brain waves and gives you external stimulus, and by the use of external stimulus, you can learn to change something that's unconscious behavior and learn to control the state of your brain. So that'd be number one. It's proven. It does increase your IQ. Now, it's also expensive, and so it'd be good to make more money first and then do something like that, but you want to grow yourself. Number two would be something like working memory training, right? Working memory is the single most connected thing inside the human brain to fluid intelligence. And what's working memory? Working memory is your ability to work with simultaneous chunks of information at the same time. And working memory, right, is always between 5 to 7, plus or minus 2, chunks of information at once. In other words, nobody in society, even geniuses, can pay attention to more than 7 things at a time, and when they do, what they're doing is something called chunking. They actually don't have an expanded working memory past that. However, working memory can be expanded by 20 or 30%. Working memory also affects your entire intelligence capacity. Number 3, you have proper rest, right? When you sleep more, your brain functions better, your IQ is higher. 4, meditation, also proven to improve fluid intelligence. Number 5, reading. Taking time to read and study and focus your brain has the benefit of producing long-term changes in the brain while you learn things in your area of expertise, at the same time enhancing your working memory and your attention, as well as the information that's stored in the long-term physical neuronal structure in your brain, which is incredibly important to continue to do. Now, I believe it's superior to think of self-growth in terms of education and also cognitive enhancement than it is only in terms of self-growth, because with the word personal development or personal growth, what is it that we're thinking of? Probably goal setting, probably The Secret, or motivational rally, or maybe an NLP training, or maybe going to a seminar. And all that's valuable, it has a powerful place in learning, but what about reading things like financial publications? What about keeping up with technology trends? What about keeping up with accounting? Or what about studying mathematics? What about studying physics? What about studying history? Personally, my favorite personal growth in the area of human enhancement as far as reading and learning has been NLP and hypnosis. And that's actually the reason why I've partnered with William Wood to create our training products. However, the truth is I've probably gotten just as much out of simply studying history and watching technology trends development and self-education on economics through studying financial publications and history. Self-learning, self-education. Take yourself seriously. Invest in yourself. Do yourself a favor, up your game. And don't just read, you want to study things and pick them apart and put them back together. Like you're going to teach what you're learning right now in a class in a few minutes. Don't just accept things, question everything. Because you disagree with someone or something doesn't mean that you have to dislike them. It doesn't mean you have to send hate their way or throw things at them. You could just disagree and have different opinions and be okay with each other. Someone disagreed with me the other day about my positive views, for example, on Donald Trump, who's the president-elect, as president. They're educated, they're intelligent, and they read about most things. I like them right now, exactly the same as I did before the disagreement, and their dissenting views. They made me, instead of argue, what I did was I picked up and I read 4 of Donald Trump's books in less than a week, because I read fast and my brain's changed from doing it, which allows me to read it even more fast, and I read a lot, and you can ask anybody around me and they'll say that that's true. So what's the result of that? Well, now I like Donald Trump more than I did a week ago. I'm not afraid to talk about it because I think that not talking about your opinions is for weak people that don't actually have good opinions. I think you should talk about your opinions and be okay with each other, right? It's a better society if we think and challenge things, and you can't think if you don't have multiple sides. So in other words, I like him more now than I did before, much more, right? Because I read. Now I also read books by people who don't like him, who don't agree with me, and that helps me think. Now I like to read a lot, and that's me, and you don't have to do as much as I do. I also still like the person who disagreed with me as much as I did before, and they can dislike Donald Trump if they want and disagree with me, and they can argue with me if they want, and it's fine. I formed my own opinion, and it's my opinion because I challenged it. I said, well, maybe they're right. I'm going to go check this out and check all the sources, right? Came to my own conclusion. You don't just want to watch something and believe it, or watch me and believe it. Check it. Research it for yourself. Form your own thoughts and opinions. Now, you want to become a thinking person and study every bit of data in the field that you're pursuing for what you're managing. And the great thing about memory in the human mind is the more things that you remember, check this out, the easier it becomes to remember more things, meaning your ability to remember things is actually progressive with the new connections, with new information forming in your brain. It's easier to make more connections with more existing information in your brain to connect to. So in other words, learning actually gets easier the more you learn. So reading more, it's not going to overwhelm you, and neither will learning more, especially if it's focused. It's the opposite. You'll be overwhelmed less by thinking and learning more, by increasing your capacity for consciousness. Now, America and many other countries, they've been in a decline in thinking for decades, even though we have way more information. Now, this isn't true with everybody, but it is true of society. There's more illiteracy today than there was in the late 1700s in America. Not a lot of people know that. Now, school was awful when I was in it. Horrible. My parents had much better school when they were in high school, which is why I didn't like school very much. Now, I couldn't see at the time how learning such dumb stuff that's not applicable to me was useful. And now it's worse, right? But here's the thing I want to tell you. Don't study because someone told you to or because you want something. Study because you want to learn. Study because you want to master your field. Study because you love it. Study because you love being the best. Study to conquer your mind. Study to conquer your heart, your spirit. Study to become a master of your trade. And then take the whole minimalist approach by the government and personal development gurus, throw it in the trash, buy another book, and then 10 more, then wear out the pages. And then you want to step into the future that you want to create with the knowledge that you need to create it, empowered and constantly learning new things. Now let's talk about some dissenting views and research them on your own. A friend of mine, this gets into the title. This is Jamie Hudson. He's a good friend of mine for years. He was talking to me about this, and this is what he said. He says, David, that's not always true. There are exceptions. For example, Gary Vaynerchuk, he thinks reading's bullshit, right? Yeah, and he says that. Gary says that. And Gary's also not a billionaire, and also not one of the 500 billionaires in the world, and that's also not the reason he's wealthy. He's not wealthy, in other words, from his lack of reading, right? And he still studies shit. He still pays attention to his market. He just doesn't read books. He still takes time to think, to talk to people, to learn, to expand his consciousness and mind. And it's the stupidest thing that he says. And although he's got lots of great advice, and I love Gary, I'll take that piece of advice and acknowledge that it's bullshit and throw it in the trash. And I'll tell him he'd be smarter if he studied more and he read. Gary, if you ever see this, by the way, I love you. I'm touching your butt with my mind right now. But that thing you say is full of shit. Just on that, though, and I want you to keep the other great stuff coming that you always teach. Now, my point is, you want to grow your mind, expand it, grow your intelligence. You want to network with people that are smart. You want to study new things and fill your association with it. And right now, by deciding to do this, you automatically have just become better. Now, I have a friend and a mentor of mine, Orrin Woodward. He reads 6 hours a day. I'm not expecting you to do that. But talking to this guy, it's like walking into a room where your mind just shuts off from his knowledge. Because intelligence is beautiful and overwhelming and has the capacity to change the world. The smarter you get, the better your instincts get. And I've done this right and wrong in both ways. Because you have a good instinct, because you're paying attention to something, doesn't mean your instincts will always be good. And I use this as a metaphor in martial arts, right? What is the most instinctual gut check response people get if somebody's swinging at them? It's to tense up and go like this, which is the stupidest way to respond to an attack. The best thing you could do is totally relax, and then there'd be different theories on what to do. But with a relaxed mind, even if you get hit, you're gonna get hurt less, right? Who gets killed in car accidents? Not the drunk driver most of the time. It's the other person because they tense up and the drunk person's relaxed, right? So in other words, the counterintuitive thing is actually correct, and it's the person with trained instincts that develops the correct instincts to survive. And how do you develop your instincts? You develop them from learning. So if you want good instincts, you've got to pay attention to the right things and keep them constantly in your mind, right? And I've gone through periods where I kept the whole market in my mind, made amazing decisions, then periods where I was trying to maintain decisions, but not keeping the market in my mind, and therefore, I wasn't having the right instincts. So in other words, you want to be a master, you want to keep the connected market in your mind, and you're going to start knowing the right thing to do all the time after a period of time of doing it. And this actually gets into a principle that I'm going to teach in a future episode that I call the 700 hours principle. Now, how do you start getting good? Scroll down. First of all, tell me how you're going to change in the comments. Tell me what you liked about this. I know we were a little bit intense in the title. Gary Vaynerchuk is not all full of shit just when he talks about reading, all right? I love Gary. But scroll down. Tell me what your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you love about Gary too. And also tell me what you're going to change in your life and what you're going to start paying attention to and what you learned today. Now, put your email in, and I want you to claim your shortcut. And I'm going to give you an audio today's episode, also a downloadable workbook you can take. And I want you to remember to empower yourself. And you won't have less time from investing in yourself. It's the opposite. When I grew up in a religious family, and my dad always taught to tithe. And I used to say that's a lot of money. It's like 10% of your income. And he said, Dave, and I'll never forget this, because later I studied it, and over large scale studies, it's true. He says, Dave, when you give your income away at a fixed percentage, you don't have less because God gives you more. When you take a percentage of your time and you invest in yourself, you don't have less time, you have more self, which then gives you the power to conquer time. And that's who you become to be great. Philosophical discussion today. I do love Gary Vaynerchuk. Scroll down, comment, put your email in, and I'll see you in today's bonuses. I appreciate you, my friend. Been another episode of the Daily Shortcut. By the way, I'm giving you a hug with my mind. See you in the next episode.